Hi everybody, this is Jacob's Guitar Channel, and today I want to talk about creating sounds by means of split frequencies. It's kind of that you want the best of both worlds, that you have on the one hand an amplifier which has got really nice bass, and on the other hand you've got an amplifier which produces very sweet sounds in the upper frequency ranges, and you can't really decide which one to use, and yeah, you kind of want to have your cake and eat it too. And this is exactly what we're going to do today. At the beginning of the video, you've heard two examples. I played, well, a very hi-fi sounding clean tone, and after that I switched to a high gain metal sound, and both of them were made that way. You put the guitar into a frequency splitter, and then you take all the frequencies below a certain frequency and put them into the amplifier, which has got a really nice bass amplification. And then you take all the frequencies above the frequency you've split it on and put it into an amplifier which has got really nice highs. After you've routed them, you mix them together again, and then you might want to apply some global effects like delay or reverb. And well, that is what you've just heard. It's kind of a playing field for creativity. You can improve your sounds in various ways. You can create really freaked out sounds, and we're going to go over to HXEdit, and I'm going to tell you how I created the two sounds in question. These are very basic sounds, of course. Maybe you want to set up from there and explore creatively what you can do with frequency splits. Okay, here we are in HXEdit, and now I'm going to show you how I've made the metal sound. As you can see, the signal path is split here, and it goes into two amplifiers, both of them being routed through compressors. Then it's going over to the second signal path where I add the reverb. It's the sound of the two which is more simple, so I'm going to start with that one. Yeah, this is the amp for the lows. I've decided for the placator dirty, and as you can see, I've turned the bass quite up. Mids is always set like that, and I've reduced the higher frequencies. I did not dial in too much distortion. Okay, it has got a little distortion. Yeah, I've set these one on FET and HBE, which are controls specifically to the Friedman amplifier, which is the real-world amplifier the placator is modeled upon. And I turned up these two controls, bias and bias X, because these add tube compression to the sound. It's kind of an internal control of the amplifier, how hot the currency runs through the tubes. And I want the bass signal to be more compressed than the high signal. Going over to the compressor, I've put on the bass side of things. I went through the deluxe compressor on both signal paths, and I've turned the threshold quite low, and I've turned the ratio quite up, so I got those really tight basses. Yeah, I've put in a little bit of attack, so you have these chunk metal sounds coming through, and I did not dial in too much release because I don't want rumble in the low frequencies. Yeah, that is the thing on the lower frequencies. On the higher frequency, I've choose for amplifier the rectifier. And as you see, I turned the drive quite up here. I turned the bass down because we don't want any of that. And I've turned treble a little bit down and presence up because I wanted more presences than treble frequencies. This is the high thing, the fizzly thing of distortion, and I want to emphasize that. Also here, I took up these two controls so that I get nice tube compression on the highs, and the compressor here is set up differently. You've got a higher threshold, so it kicks in earlier, but a lower ratio. And that is normal if you compress frequency bands well on their own and not the complete signal. You will always choose these settings as a starting point. I've put in more attack here because I want the tack of the high frequencies quite predominantly in the sound, and I've turned the level a little bit up. It was quite a mess, really balancing out the two signal paths. Before we do that, shortly a word on the cabs I'm emulating here. The rectifier goes to the native 4x12 rectifier cabinet. And as a microphone, I've chose the 47 condenser, which is a Neumann condenser microphone model, because it really picks up the silvery highs. It picks up the fizz of the distortion very well. And normally you will use a condenser mic to get nice high frequencies in your recording. And yeah. On the lower side of things, I've chosen the 4x12 XXL with V30s because an XXL boss produces more bass, and I've chosen a ribbon microphone because ribbon microphones yield a darker signal. And as you might see, I've put in quite early reflections in here, and I've put the ribbon microphone quite close, so the bass is quite close to the ear and the highs not. I've put in a higher distance and, well, a little bit less early reflections. So the condenser micro will be more in the room. Yeah, and here is where you mix them. Here is where you send the split crossover. Here's where it returns. And you've got the A level, which is these two things. And you've got the B level, which is these two things. And you can mix them here. As you see, I've left the bass side of things at 0 dB. And then I reduced slowly and carefully the high end until it went to minus 9.8 dB, which sounded well to me. What I want to do now is I want to show you both frequency bands on its own. This here is only bass. And you can see a nice compressed saturated overdrive there from the Friedman amplifier. And here now you can see only the highs. And this is how the signal works. If I put it all back to the original settings, which is quite hard to do, then you get a mix of these two signals. And it sounds like that. And now you've got really all the frequencies covered, and you've got this big sounding metal thing. The only thing I did in parallel path was to add a little room reverb so that the guitar is not so upfront, but some metal guitar players do it like that. They use no reverb. If you listen to Slayer's Rain in Blood, this record is without any reverb, so everything is straight into your face and it gives a brutal sound. So if you're really aiming for a brutal metal sound, you might skip the reverb here and yeah, only use the upper path. Anyways, all right. So this is the metal sound. In a few moments, we're going to head over to the clean sound, which I'm going to explain as well. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the clean sound a little bit. Yeah, the clean sound is a little bit more complicated because it has a few effects after the, well, actual split sound, which you can see in the upper path. Yeah, again, I split the frequency at 500 hertz. And this is where the higher frequencies go, and this is where the lower frequencies go. Let's start with the lower frequency. The lower frequencies goes into a Tweed Blues Normal, which is a model of a Fender Bassman. I choose the Bassman for practical reasons. This is the bass path of things. So I need an amplifier which is renowned and famous for its bass. And, well, obviously, here comes the Bassman. This is the box for the Bassman. Line 6 gives us a model in the Helix. It's the 4x10 box. People would connect to a Bassman. And I choose the 1-to-1 ribbon microphone again because a ribbon microphone produces more bass and picks up the bass better than any other microphone. I've set for a low distance because that's what you do when you record low frequencies. You don't put the mic in the room. You want tight bass frequencies on your recording. And, well, how did I set the Bassman amplifier? I've turned the drive down. It's a clean sound. Put bass and middle up. Put treble and presence down because we're not going to use them anyway. They will come from the other amplifier. Yeah, rest is pretty forward. These are the default controls for the Bassman. One could have turned up Bison X a little bit to add compression, but I choose to add an extra compression. I went for the deluxe comp. Very low threshold, but 6-to-1 compression for the bass. You always need to compress bass tighter than highs. yeah, only a little bit attack, because I take the attack from the high frequencies, because that's where the pick hits the string. This is a high frequency, it's a so-called transient. You don't need that here. Very long release, because you want these bass part of the note, you want them to linger a little bit. Yeah, and that's about it for this compressor. I've set the level to 7 dB plus, but that was like trial and error. The higher frequencies go into the Jazz Chorus, which is the Jazz Rivet 120 in the Helix. I use the Jazz Chorus model in the Helix quite a lot. Here again, I turned the drive down because we don't want any overdrive in a clean sound. Here I turned bass and mid down, because bass and mid, you got them quiet from the basement. And I turned treble and presence up. If you go for the loudspeaker, I choose the 47 condenser, the Neumann model again, because it's a microphone which picks up high frequencies really well. And I've set a little bit further apart from the loudspeaker, because what you want is you want to pick up the room a little bit. Yeah, so that's basically it. Here, these two get mixed together again, and all this goes over to the other path where I put in a chorus. Yeah, because I like my clean sounds with chorus, especially when the Roland Jazz Chorus is in it. Well, it's very famous for its chorus sound, of course. And in parallel path, I put in a little hole, which sounds quite nice, and a little delay, so you've got this like affected stuff. This is what it sounds all together. Yeah. And now we're going to take a look at the individual components. I'm going to play them shortly for you. Yeah. First, you are hearing only the highs. So I'm going to turn the other path down. This is only the highs which are directed to the Roland Jazz Chorus. And yeah, next thing we're going to hear are only the lows. I'm putting these up. Next, I'm going to prepare a snapshot for that. Okay, so these are only the lows. What you're hearing now is only the Fender Bassman. Yeah, and if I turn this to the original level up again, which I can simply do by double clicking here, just turning everything to where it was, you see both frequencies combined, and you get this picture. And here the effect from the frequency split is even more dramatic than in the metal sound. And you get really good result. You get a hi-fi sounding, very nice clean tone, which you might use on any 80s style song. So this is how you combine amps if you split the guitar signal by frequency. It's quite interesting to mess around with it a little bit, to try out different amps on each different path. You can even use bass guitar amps on the lower path. The Helix offers quite a bit of them. So that's a fun field for experimentation, and this is what I strongly recommend, that you experiment with what I've shown you here. And thanks for watching my video.